Wait a minute, are you selling beats without an LLC? Oh no, let me tell you, probably for the first 5 or 6 years that I was making beats for a full-time living, I did not have an LLC. And guess what happened to me? Absolutely nothing. But that's not to say you shouldn't sign up and incorporate and register your LLC. I hear the narrative often that you have to register an LLC in order to run a legitimate business, in order to sign contracts, in order to file taxes, in order to write off expenses. None of that's true. However, there are obvious benefits to being incorporated as an LLC. And I can honestly not think of any drawbacks to incorporating. I mean, it's not that expensive. I guess that's the only drawback. You have to pay for it. But here in my state, it's pretty reasonable. You have to renew every single year. You have to submit a report. It's easy. I mean, in my state, it's incredibly easy. You just basically confirm your address and send them $30 or something. But rather than have me talking to you about LLCs, I asked Top Music Attorney because she's an actual lawyer, and maybe you'll believe her more than you believe me when I talk about this stuff. The other thing that I want to focus on in today's video is this other narrative that is incredibly harmful to the music producer community. And it's this absolutely ridiculous notion that beat makers, us, the people that produce the beats, do not deserve songwriting splits. You will see this over and over again. You'll see it here. This guy's a singer. I mean, whatever. Songwriting is lyrics, not an instrumental. And so this is a narrative that is pervasive in the music community. A lot of recording artists and then a lot of producers. This is the real harm. A lot of producers themselves start believing that because we just made the beat, we didn't write the lyrics, we are not considered songwriters. Again, intuitively, based on our common sense, we have to imagine that someone who composes classical music, symphony orchestra music that doesn't involve lyrics is still a songwriter. Obviously, when you record an entire CD and it's all classical music without vocals, isn't that a collection of songs? Aren't you writing songs? Of course, common sense is not so common. And the terrible thing is that what people will tell us is that, hey, you don't deserve songwriting splits, and then we don't get equity in songs that we create that we are legally entitled to receive royalties from. And I'll show you what I mean, because I always come with the receipts. But again, we're going to consult the lawyer, since a lot of you people don't believe me because, what do I know? I'm just some guy that's been doing this for a living for a couple decades. But check this out. I've shown you this chart before. The music business is 2 copyrights: the sound recording copyright, the underlying composition. The underlying composition is split into 2 sections, the writer's share and the publisher's share. The writer's share, I mean, everyone who creates music, once it's fixed in tangible form, owns these 2 copyrights to whatever they create. That includes a song with lyrics or a song without lyrics. And to further exemplify what I'm talking about, and hopefully this helps before the lawyer even has to say a single word, here we are on copyright.gov. It doesn't get more authoritative than copyright.gov. They are the legal authority on copyright. They have this great PDF guide for copyright and music, and look what it says right here. Let me zoom in. Musical work is a song's underlying composition, this part, this side of the copyright coin. Think musical notes on sheet music along with any accompanying lyrics. Composers and lyricists are both songwriters. There it is on copyright.gov. I should have stopped fucking playing with me, man. I don't know if people are just willfully ignorant or they're just trolls, but if you fall in the latter category, well played, because this shit is exhausting. So let's talk about the LLC registration thing and the songwriter thing. Shout out to Miss Crystal from Top Music Attorney. She's actually the attorney that is suing the generative AI platforms that have admitted to stealing a whole millions of songs and beats and lyrics and voices from all of us. You, me, and trust and believe we already have a video talking about that lawsuit, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk about LLCs and the songwriter splits. And join the Patreon, collab on some beats. We've been making some amazing beats. They go on our BeatStars beat stores. We're selling copies of those beats, selling licenses, leasing. The link to that is below. Shout out to all the members. And if you are a member of any of the tiers from the $5 tier and up, you get access to the private Discord. You get access to the sample vault. And if you're a higher member, you get coaching calls. You also get access to all of my drum kit releases, all of my solo sample pack releases for free, for as long as you're a member. And let me know in the comments if you knew this about the LLCs, because I feel like LLCs are one of the most misunderstood concepts in the music business. Do you need an LLC to start selling beats or producing music at a professional level?
All right. So do you need one? No. And I'm going to give you the pros and cons. If you don't set one up, so DJ Payne 1, you sell your own beats directly. You don't have an LLC, which is a limited liability company. Okay. If you don't set one of these things up, you become what's called a sole proprietorship. So it's just you. Potentially you have a fancy business name that you use. And the risk is that if something happens and someone's like, you put a sample in your beat that I used and I got sued by Universal, I'm going to go sue you personally. And so that means I get to come after your personal bank account, your house, your car. So the thing with an LLC is that it creates this liability shield. And in most states to set one up, it might be like $50. It might be a couple $100. So the cost to kind of do it is, obtainable by most. So setting it up, it creates a liability shield so that if you get sued for, sampling or whatever it was, I can only sue your business bank account. I can go after your, business assets. So it protects you personally. So there's a huge, very, very good reason of why you should do this, but you don't have to do it. You just put yourself at risk by doing that.
Generally, what I hear is that people will say, well, I have an LLC, and so I have an additional layer of copyright protection, or I have an LLC, and so I have more leverage when it comes time to negotiate with a label. And I always challenge them to show me, the source of that information, and they never can. So my concern is always not that producers aren't incorporating. If you incorporate and in the name LLC, it's a limited liability. The keyword is right there, liability. The L isn't for leverage. The L isn't for lots of money. The L isn't for losing out on royalty streams. Are there other benefits? Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I could get so many people more to sign up to do this if I was like, oh, if we just get you an LLC, we're going to get you a better deal with the labels. No, and I mean, truly, like you get liability protection should be something that really compels you to do this. Now, here's the thing. Practically speaking, if you're watching this, it's not just going and setting it up and magically it does all the things. You set it up and then you have to use it. Do not sign another contract in your individual name. Sign it in the name of the LLC. That's very important. Okay. It doesn't work unless you actually use it in that kind of way. And then you set up a business bank account. You do all the good stuff. But no, it's not going to give you, something super duper, which is why I'm saying, like, if I'm going to go do a deal for you, the additional benefit might be that makes you look a little bit more organized. It also, makes you a little bit more professional because you're operating under a real company. Because some people will just be like, why should I do it yet? I'm not rolling in the riches. And I did it when I was 16 before I had anything happening. You do it first because then we can focus you on making your beats, putting your sample packs together, right? So actually rolling out and building on top of it. It's just a first step.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Maybe they'll listen to you more so than to me on this. My concern is just always producers doing things, spending money on things, and not understanding why, like signing up for a PRO thinking that it offers a layer of copyright protection, signing up to an LLC thinking that it will make you more money dealing with major labels, like you can ask for a bigger advance because you have an LLC or something to that effect, where I think, okay, if you know why you need an LLC, by all means sign up. If you're not quite sure, learn so you have the information before you make that choice.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, a great example, especially for music producers. Have you heard of the 1 second rule for sampling? Right?
I've heard of the 3 second, the 4 second, the 6 second, the 12 second.
As long as you use 1 second or less, you're going to be okay. You don't have to get a sync license. So this is what we hear. And this is very much a myth. And it's a very scary myth because I covered this just recently on my channel. But, Budweiser did a campaign that went viral. It was a huge smash. They got awards for this thing. And they were touting, we use the 1 second rule. So we use all these famous songs, Beyonce, the Beatles, Kendrick Lamar. And we did a Name That Song campaign. So we used only 1 second or less. And anyway, so big success, yada, yada. They're in some very hot water because there was a fundamental misunderstanding of how it works. You do have to license. And the example I like to use, because I had a song that I was doing and we were trying to sample Cameo, and or as a Cameo sample, and he does his ow. That's it. Just a vocal ow. And we were trying to clear that. We couldn't get it cleared. So it doesn't matter how short it is. If you can't get it cleared, don't use it.
Yeah, that happened to Kanye West for Gold Digger because of that scratch. And that was under a second long, the Get Down sample, vocal sample.
No, it's funny. I talked about him. Here's the thing. He does business in a certain kind of way, which is he knows he's supposed to get clearances and he just does it. And it might be because he has some cash to pay lawyers to go deal with the mess after the fact. I don't know. But he is very famous for just still taking what he wants, releasing music, and then getting into trouble and dealing with it later.
Among other things, are modern producers, who many would call beat makers, legally considered songwriters when it comes to title registration?
It's funny. You asked that question for a reason. Why do you ask that question?
Because many people believe that producers are not considered songwriters, and in order to be considered a songwriter legally, you have to write lyrics. And so if you compose music, instrumental music, you are legally not a songwriter, and therefore you aren't entitled to songwriter splits.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes when people ask questions like that are so broad sweeping, I'm like, have you ever been in a session where you're like sitting there with a producer and the producer's like, hey, let's change those 2 words. Let's change that melody. So even if someone is just the producer, which I feel is just never the case, often they will be making, contributions creatively to even things they weren't otherwise going to be touching. Maybe they're not technically the lyric writer. Maybe they're not the melody writers for, the top lines and stuff like that. So on the, are they legally considered? It's very specific to literally what did they do? And here is how technical it can get. We've had cases where, you have a couple people who are standing in the room and someone who is not a songwriter, a producer, anything. They make a noise and that noise is picked up in the recording. They technically are now a copyright owner because they have literally made a contribution to the final recording. So I think in how you define and credits, a lot of it is just by agreement. We have people all the time who are credited as executive producer and they did nothing other than maybe they were an investor. So there's a what you have agreed to kind of thing. But, in my experience, I learned how to produce, I songwrite, and then I do all kinds of things where sometimes I just push things off to other people and I'm like, hey, here's the song, make it better. So it's very specific to each situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of, I think maybe the confusion lies within the PRO registration process where you can designate somebody as a lyrics author or as a composer or as a programmer. And so people think, okay, that's different. That's fundamentally different from a songwriter, even though they're all designations. Okay.
Well, and even, to your point there's confusion a lot. For example, on if you're registering with your PRO, so here in the US, there's one for every country at least. But here in the US, we have 6. And so whoever you're using to collect your performance royalties, a lot of people, when they go to register, they're like, oh, I'm now protected for my copyright because I registered with my PRO, and actually they're totally separate things. So where these confusions kind of pop up is exactly like that. They see that there's only so many, and so they're like, oh, it must have this legal implication. And really, it's just someone put in, these are the options so that we can record it and pay out everyone accordingly. Because even when you go to file your copyright, which is not your PRO, it's through copyright.gov, okay, totally separate thing. It will be like who wrote what and did what. And so it's going to be different terminology there as well.
Yeah. And then that takes into account, like if I'm a producer and I put out a solo project and I register it all to myself because I'm the sole composer of everything, I'm considering the sole songwriter as far as like a BMI registration or an ASCAP registration is concerned.
Yeah. And I guess food for thought, the biggest thing that we care about for your PRO registration is you have kind of like, I always compare it to ice cream. I don't know why I'm comparing it to food, but I'm like, publishing is like a big thing of ice cream. On one side with the chocolate, half of it is your publishing income, the other for the publisher, and the other half is the writer. So you have of the 100%, half of it's going to be the writing, the other half is the publishing, and people get confused on that. I'm like, if you wrote your song, you own 100%, you get to collect the whole bowl of ice cream. You get the publisher side, you get the writer's side. It's just how you register it. So again, what I care about the most is, are you collecting all of that? Have you done this step? Let's not get too hung up on the nuances of whether you are a producer or a songwriter. You know what I mean? I'm like, just go collect your money. That's what I care about.
Yeah. No, and that's the other thing too. We get caught up on terminology, and I think when you're collaborating with a rapper or a singer, they believe that they are the only writers involved sometimes because they are writing lyrics. Whereas me, I'm just playing chords. I'm just playing keys. There's no writing involved, even though it's all songwriting. But that doesn't really matter ultimately, because you can split up the equity of an underlying composition however you want. I could give it, I guess legally I couldn't give some to my cat, but I could give some to my mother, and she's never written a song or played an instrument in her life. As long as I want to give that to her, I can. It's just like you said, it's a matter of negotiating. So you have a good point. The semantics don't matter as long as the registration is fair and everyone's happy.
Yeah, and let me give you a pro tip. You know, if you're doing these deals, sometimes like don't get stuck on silly stuff. So, you know, for example, on one of my albums, one of the songs, the producer did a couple of things. He like embellished some drums. I wrote the whole thing, I produced the thing, I sent it to him, and he just did some extra stuff. And I'm like, you're awesome. You're going to get 50%. You're getting credit on this as much as me. Like, who cares? Let's just get it done and move forward.
See, I love that because we just covered a conversation between John Bellion and Ross Golan where Ross felt passionately that people who simply contributed drums to a track should not be considered writers and should not get a split. And I personally have a problem with that. So you saying that makes me feel a little better moving forward about the current state of songwriters and producers and programmers.